morning. If you don't know where you've come from, then you don't know where you are. And if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, you're probably going wrong. The words of one of the great fantasy writers of our time, Terry Pratchett. I wish those words had been available to 19-year-old me when I was trying to convince the world that doing a degree in archaeology was a good thing. The reaction of most people to my decision to study archaeology was borderline horror. They all found history incredibly dull. Surely that was all in the past, they said. And besides, is this going to enable you to make a living? After all, archaeology doesn't fly planes, you know. There were dark predictions about my career always lying in ruins. A joke I found a little hard to smile at, but I'll come back to that in a moment. I will admit that choosing archaeology was not an easy thing to do, particularly when girls were choosing exciting paths in engineering, aviation, advertising. But I was on a firm path, or so I thought. 10 years as a military spouse, 7 relocations, 2 children later, that joke I just referred to came back to haunt me. My academic path had been packed and moved once too often. Struggling to keep my link with archaeology, I would tramp through villages in southern India or in Assam, writing and recording anything historical I encountered. I had lost none of my passion for archaeology, but outside of the academic world, it was a real battle against the forces of apathy for anything historical. I was hearing the same stories. That was all in the past. Now we look forward to a fabulous future. Why don't you do something useful, like join the civil services? But as these things happened, it occurred to me that archaeology is too important to remain in the realm of academia. And a real desire came over me to communicate why it's so important for everyone, not just academics and scholars, to know and understand the methods of archaeology. Why is this so important? If archaeology doesn't fly planes, then what does it do? Every one of us here is a historical being. None of what you are today has come overnight. The languages you speak, the clothes you wear, the food you eat, the stories you tell, your technologies, your ideas, even your genetic makeup has all come out of this huge vessel called human experience. And the stories of archaeology are links from that vessel that enable you to understand how you've evolved. And if you don't understand all the challenges, the forces, the adaptations that have taken humans to get where we are today, then how will you craft a future? Written history, by and large, tends to focus on the elite. You know, the lives of kings and queens and battles and a few privileged people. Archaeology is a little more democratic. They're tiny fragments of ordinary lives. A tool, a necklace, the name of a dog paints a broader picture, putting together details of lives that will never be written. I realized that these were lessons probably best learnt young. So I decided to write a book for children. The future guardians of our archaeological heritage. And there was a simple message. Look around you. Train your eye to see the remains of the past, because there are stories in them, important stories that have fashioned who you are today. I'll give you a few examples. Walk along the dried up riverbeds of any river in the ancient Deccan Plateau, and you may see something that looks like this. On the face of it, an ordinary chunk of stone. But if you look carefully, you will see that it's a beautifully crafted tool, sharp along the edges, with a nice comfortable bottom so that you can hold it in the palm of your hand. Would a chill run down your spine if I told you that this was once held in the hand of someone more than 500,000 years ago, as she skinned an animal or chopped wood for her cave? The hand axe, such a brilliant design that it has been continuously used for more than 1,000,000 years, making it one of the longest used, or perhaps the longest used tool in human history. And clearly our ancestors were onto something, because today doctors are experimenting with blades made of a stone called obsidian, said to make a finer cut than metal. In the sheltered caves and rock overhangs of Bhimbetka in central India, you will find these eyewitness accounts of lives lived more than 12,000 years ago. They're marvelously dynamic pieces of prehistoric art. You can almost hear the hunters shouting to each other as they run down and try to spear their prey. You can practically hear the hum of bees as women collect honey. And you can hear the pulse of a drumbeat as dancers, sometimes as many as 40 at a time, sway to a rhythm. A couple of them on the end even stumble, lose the beat and fall down. Scenes from the lives of our prehistoric ancestors from their own point of view, as living, breathing beings with hopes and fears and feelings. In this area, there are still communities, not just in this area, but all over the country. There are still communities who paint their everyday lives on the walls of their huts. Beautiful paintings full of rituals and symbols. The only difference is now their paintings are sought after by art collectors. These artifacts from the Harappan civilization, now earlier known as the Indus Valley civilization, 4,500 years ago, these sophisticated people lived in perhaps the earliest planned cities. They built beautiful houses with drainage systems which would put our modern cities to shame. They wore beautiful clothes and jewelry, and operated a complex trading system with perhaps one of the oldest written languages. I can't say we've inherited their civic sense, but if you take a look at these terracotta toys, they wouldn't be out of place in any Indian craft fair today. And there is a collection of Harappan jewelry in the National Museum which looks like it might belong on my dressing table. These pillars, these beautiful pillars that polish so finely that they're sometimes mistaken for metal. On them are inscribed the words and thoughts of a very great king named Ashoka. A king who, at the height of his power, saw the suffering created by his incessant wars and vowed to give up that path of violence. He actually apologized to his people and said, "I will now look after you better." 23 centuries later, Mahatma Gandhi followed that same path of non-violence. It was his weapon of choice for our independence struggle. And those four back-to-back lions that form the capital of many of Ashoka's pillars is our national symbol. This man, we don't know what he looks like because his head is missing. This was found in ploughed fields near Mathura in northern India. He seems remarkably overdressed for the sweltering northern plains. He's got a thick coat belted over a tunic, heavy padded boots, lethal weapons. He's dressed in a style associated more with horse-riding nomads from Central Asia, because that is what he was. Kanishka of the Kushana tribe that came sweeping down over the Hindu Kush and created an empire so huge, stretching from Afghanistan to the northern Ganga plains, that Kanishka actually had two capitals. One was near Peshawar, which is in Pakistan now, and one in Mathura. In his empire, there were Indians, there were Greeks, there were Persians, there were Central Asians, and they all lived in harmony. Kanishka was able to keep them happy. How? Another little archaeological gem, coins. Although it's recorded that Kanishka was a Buddhist, his coins depicted Shiva and Nandi, the Persian gods Mitra and Atash, and the Greek god Helios. Greco-Roman artists dealt with Indian themes. So Buddha was depicted with curly hair and long flowing robes that looked like a Roman toga, and his attendants were wearing Roman-style sandals. I think early signs of that open-mindedness and tolerance and acceptance that have been the hallmark of our country. 2000 years ago, caves were being dug out of the basalt rock in the Western Ghats. They were meant to be retreats for Buddhist and Jain monks, but they slowly came to be associated with traders who walked along those paths, and the decorations became more and more elaborate and more sophisticated, finally culminating in this. An unbelievable temple complex carved out of a single rock hillside, top down. Now, carving a stone out with a handheld chisel is a challenge in itself. This is extra. It would have taken genius abilities in planning, in skills, in just sheer motivation to execute something like this, not to mention the skills of thousands of unnamed artisans. What were they thinking? The king who commissioned this was a devotee of Shiva. And what he wanted more than anything was to gaze upon Shiva's holy abode, Mount Kailash in the Himalayas. And to do that, he created his own Mount Kailash right where he lived. Shiva devotees today, on their bucket list, is a trek to Kailash Mansarovar. So popular that I'm told that their waiting list is backed up many years. This is one of my personal favorites. Outside villages in South India, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, you'll see these. They're called hero stones, Veerakal or Natukal in the local language. I like to think of them as prehistoric superhero comics, because on these flattish upright stones are panels carved with action scenes from the life of a hero. On the bottom panel, you'll see the hero fending off cattle thieves or wild animals, in which process he saves his village but loses his life. In the central panel, he is accompanied to heaven by his friends and relatives, and in the top he reaches heaven and he's welcomed by happy gods. There are heroine stones too, including one young lady who avenged the death of her father. And there are dogs. There are stones that commemorate dogs and their heroic activities on the battlefield, or their defense of their masters against wild boar attacks. We all still love our superheroes, don't we? Recently there was a tussle in a village outside Bangalore when archaeologists tried to remove some of these stones for safekeeping to a museum. The villagers said, no, you're taking away the good luck of the village. And those dogs have been identified as hunting dogs, ancestors of the specially bred indigenous breeds, Chippy, Parai and Kani, which are still being bred in the area today and are now being sought after by army dog training units. Ancient stories that still resonate. You may still decide to go off and fly a plane, but I don't think that should stop you from looking around you. We live in a country that literally exudes history. Fragments of the past trace us back to the earliest days of humanity. Everywhere you look, those remains seem to call out to us. Come, pick us up, read us, understand us. We are what made you. Archaeology tells us and highlights all the changes and challenges that humans have been through, but also the continuities of ideas and technologies that have shaped us. The great Tamil scholar and historian, Noburu Karashima, once said something very interesting about the inscriptions that he studied. He said, they're calling us from the past and whispering many things. I think those whisperings are all around us. We can hear them, we can even see them if we train our eye. So look around you, observe and understand those whisperings, and you will know where you came from, you will know where you are, and you can know what sort of a future you can create. Thank you.